Welcome to Soaring Saturdays, where we soar. Let me do a bit of adjustment here. There we go. So, today I thought we'd discuss something interesting. Is the shadow sinful? We all have a shadow. But is it sinful? Sin is going against something in a negative way. We have many different definitions for what is sin. But is the shadow itself sinful? Some people would say it's our sinful nature. But is it really, or is it just a part of us that exists? Sin is something that goes against love. But our shadow is not necessarily going against love. It's just the unwanted parts of ourselves. But is it going against love? If it's trying to preserve us, if it's trying to help us, if it's trying to protect us and keep us safe, is it sinful? It may be misguided, but is it truly sinful? So, what are these unwanted parts? Well, these unwanted parts could be our negative parts, where, the violent parts, the hateful parts, the fearful parts, the angry parts, the parts that would do harm. But it can also be what we call the light shadow, which are those parts of us that say, hey, you're not that great. You're not good enough to be that. The part of us that creates the imposter syndrome, that we feel that we're not enough. My saying, I am enough, I love myself, I'm free. It's because I am free. I'm free to choose. That's where my free will comes in. I choose. I choose to live from my heart. And a lot of times it gets knocked up to my head, but that's okay. I'm getting better at it. If I'd known the things I know now when I was younger, I probably would be in a totally different place. And if you believe in alternate timelines and things like that, then, there is some place where there's a me that's in a totally different place because I learned these things early. But as far as this now, this one where I am, well, guess what? I am enough and I love myself, I am free. And I accept that my shadow exists. So, the sin, in my perspective, is not to love ourselves unconditionally. To not accept every part of ourselves. To not have part of ourselves that isn't loved and accepted. It doesn't have to be liked, but it does have to be loved. We don't stop loving a 2-year-old throwing a tantrum, do we? Well, then why stop loving ourselves just because part of ourselves throws a tantrum? In yoga, we have what we call samskara, which is action committed. I move my hand. The karma is that there's a shadow, as you can see. Also, my muscles get flexed. My blood circulates more. If I'm lifting heavy weights, my muscles tear a bit and get stronger as more muscle is built. Samskara, action committed. Karma, action remitted. If you do something, there's a consequence. The thing about it is, our shadow is simply a perspective, and we have a perspective based on that. The shadow can be anything. Anything we don't want to admit. Anything at all that we don't want to admit. Whether we're looking at a young person we find attractive or an old person we find attractive. Or whether we think about stealing that candy bar because nobody's around and we can't even pay for our stuff that we've already got. We could slide it in. Those are all different parts of our shadow saying, hey, I'm here. Those thoughts can be considered sinful. But it's part of our shadow. And the thing about it is, if you don't act on the thought has happened, but you didn't act on it. What is the consequence of that thought? Are you deciding now to feel guilt, shame, blame? Are you deciding to feel, oh well, maybe next time? We torture ourselves, and our feelings believe they have a right to exist, and they do, because all feelings are valid. They have feelings too. Feelings have feelings. And our shadow is existing just simply to keep us safe. Comfort zones kill, and we know this. But we become very comfortable with our discomforts, so we can remove ourselves from them by going beyond. Now, since the shadow is perspective-based, is it negative or positive? Well, it's both at the same time, like yin-yang. Like I said, we have the dark shadow, which are those things about us we don't want to admit to that might hurt people, excuse me, or even ourselves. But we also have the light shadow, those things we don't want to admit we're good at. And self-effacement is putting ourselves down. And that's part of the dark shadow, saying, no, I'm not good enough. So, what is the shadow thing? Why is it here? Why does it even exist? Well, without limits, things just keep expanding. Now, the universe, as far as we know, has no limits. It's just keeping on expanding. But we as human beings, if our bodies kept expanding, we'd eventually explode. That's pretty wild thinking, but yeah. We just kept getting bigger, bigger, and bigger, bigger, and bigger, bigger, and bigger, we'd eventually explode. Our growth would become so much that our cells couldn't handle it. So every human has the potential in their DNA to commit any action at any time. Think about that. Every human has in their DNA the potential to commit any action at any time. Wow. That's incredible. That's very incredible. You mean even the person who has an extra Y chromosome? Or the person who's born with severe cerebral palsy? Or the person who's born completely deformed and unable to care for themselves or truly communicate? Well, yeah, their DNA does have the potential locked within it. Even though their body and their mind may not have the capability, the potential still exists. So everything we have is shadow-based. The brighter the light, the darker the shadow. If you always live in darkness, well, you're always living in your shadow anyway, even though you can't see it. So trauma and abuse are karmic. Karma and abuse are karmic. Think about that. There are consequences for actions committed. Now, maybe the actions committed were innocent, as in a child that's being abused, but still, that karma is action remitted or the consequence of those actions committed. Also, it could be some holdover from a different period of time, if you believe in past lives. But karma is not necessarily punishment. Punishment is a perspective. I did this, now this is happening. When I was young, I had to, when my sons were young, I had to teach my sons about consequences. Hey, do you want consequences for this? but also, hey, do you want consequences for this? Teaching them that a consequence is just something that happens as a result of. So there were good consequences for good things done, and there were bad consequences for bad things done. Consequently, they've grown up to be very respectful young men, and I appreciate that very much. So karma is not necessarily punishment, because there's good karma and bad karma from a certain perspective. I'm not a dualist, so I believe that we commit action and there is reaction. And it's not always equal, and it's not always opposite. But we commit this action, there is a reaction. But the shadow itself is not necessarily punishment. It is potential. And there is potentially punishment from a certain perspective because of it. But it is not punishment in and of itself. The shadow and its fear can be our best friends. And that seems quite counterintuitive. But, to be truthful with you, if it weren't for your fear, you wouldn't be alive. Fear keeps us safe, and our shadow is often based in fear. In fact, primarily based in fear. And so therefore it's working to keep us safe. Now that doesn't seem like a very fun place to live, but that's where we all live anyway. This, no fear, I ain't afraid of nothing. Well, you're afraid of being seen afraid, or you wouldn't be saying that. So, how could these things be our friends? Well, we can learn from our darkness and from our lightness how to live in balance. Living in balance is the key. Without living in balance, we get too far one way or the other and the teeter-totter goes donk. We get all up in our head and start feeling superior. We got all down in our body and get stuck in its pain. If we live in balance, neither one affects us. Neither one knocks us out of that balance. And no matter what anybody else does, it can't bother us. It can't pull us out of our center. Used to, I had a hair trigger. And I do mean a hair trigger. And it was a hair trigger towards hugging you and giving you a kiss on the cheek, or a hair trigger on knocking the crap out of you. It was one or the other. Hair trigger. I did not live in balance. Now I see. I must live in balance. I am not superior to, nor am I inferior to anyone. In some of my skills, talents, abilities, and proficiencies, I am superior to others because I'm more advanced. But in other ways, I am very backward. I can work on a computer, but I can't tell you how to make the chip. I can't even program one anymore. But I understand the concepts behind how they work. That's not a proficiency. Now, being a clinical therapist, that's totally different. That skill goes beyond proficiency. That is an ability. That is something I have that I can use and go deep in with a laser and find the reason why something is happening. And I do it with myself. Now, I do have some blind spots. We all do. But we keep working on them. So, control is necessary for ourselves. Or if we have very young children or particular pets, but we don't have to control other people. Think about that. We have to control ourselves. We do have to put limits on and have a certain amount of control over our children and over our pets, but we don't have to control other people. In fact, they have to control themselves. And when they don't control themselves, yes, it can be a bother, but we can decide to look at it as their broken-hearted child living in their shadow, and that's their samskara. They're going to have their karma. Now, trauma and abuse can be reasons for our beliefs. We can believe that we're not enough because we were always told we were a piece of crap, or we were unplanned and therefore unwanted. My son's best friend, his father calls him daily, and some point through the conversation somehow reminds him that he ruined his father's life by being born. I've got a young friend and her parents did the same thing. You're just a mistake. You ruined our lives. What? Well, if you wanted to do something, that's one thing. You weren't prepared enough to take precautions? Now these children end up just being welfare checks? And that's all they're worth to their parents? And they're reminded regularly, you're a mistake, you weren't wanted, and you ruined my life. Huh? How horrible is that to tell a child? Even a child that is unplanned should be wanted. And the great maker makes no mistakes. The great maker makes no mistakes. Ever. None of us are mistakes. As Sri Sri Anandamurti says, there are no orphans. All the children are the children of God. There are no mistakes. All of us are meant to be here. But that doesn't mean we don't come in and experience trauma and abuse. And in fact, our culture and our society constantly points out to us how we're not enough and we need this clothing, that pair of shoes, this perfume, this food, this pill to make us feel better, this, that, the other to fill us up. Or we have to watch this show so that we all are in the know of, it's quite captivating. But once you step out of their matrix and start looking at it from an external perspective, you see how you've been caught in it. And now you're, Then you're looking at what you believe, that you silently agreed to believe. And do you still want to believe it? Because you're not required to. That's the thing, you're not required to believe anything. You're not even required to believe that you're human. You're not even required to believe that you're on this planet. And in fact, some of the people that I see on a regular basis, their delusions have them in other places, and I'm not sure where they are. And I certainly don't want to go there. When I see those people, I think, well, I really wish that I could help them. But I see that they've signed a soul contract where they're not helpable in this lifetime in that way. And I used to live my own delusion. I used to lie about things I had done, especially drugs, so that my weird thoughts and my weird expressions would have a reason. Oh, well, he's way out there, man. He's done a lot of drugs. Well, I did smoke quite a bit of pot, and I did drink a lot of alcohol. Tried cocaine a couple of times, didn't really like it. Acid wasn't really my gig. Mushrooms, they're okay, but they're not that big a deal to me. I don't miss them, those things. And I see people that would literally cut your throat to get your money just so they could get heroin. That's incredible. What kind of pain must they have been living in to start using it in the first place, and then get to the point where they would be willing to kill in order to get their hit? And they're all over the world. And in fact, it's pushed hard. It's an industry. It's a shadow industry, but it's an industry. The one thing that I do know is that our shadow beliefs can be changed. It does take some time, and it takes a lot of repetition over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, because the mind learns by repetition. But our shadow beliefs can be changed. Now, there's a big push on in the last decade or so for affirmations, but realize that affirming something means to make it firm. You can negatively affirm things too. Not all affirmations are positive. Oh, I've got the worst memory in the world. Oh, my head aches. As soon as you say my, you're owning it. And the more you repeat it, the more your mind and your body believe it. I am enough. I love myself. I am free. I am free. And so are you. And you deserve to love yourself. I am enough. I love myself. I am free. Pull those chains out and shatter them. Break them in trillions of pieces. Unchain your heart. That's an awesome song. But in this case, it literally means pull those chains out of your heart. Those heavy emotional chains of your traumatic past. They're not worth carrying. They're really not. And the beliefs can be changed. It's that simple. I am enough. Repeating I am enough. Every time something happens that starts to challenge you, I am enough. Remind yourself you are enough to get through it, because you've lived this long. You can make it through. You will make it through. And even if your body doesn't make it through, you're an infinite spiritual being having a limited human experience. If you're an atheist and you don't believe that, hey, then you just don't continue. And you're no longer experiencing the pain. I don't want to let go of my body. I like my body. I love my body. I've had a lot of fun with it, and I intend to have more. But I am working on changing its belief systems. So even though it takes time to do these things, there are certain strategies we can use. If you're on a phone or even on a computer, you can use theta waves. That's the learning state of the brain. It's a very deep meditation, and it's also the state we get into when we're getting ready to go to sleep. It's also the state that us hypnotherapists work to get the brain into, so that we can offer suggestions, so that we can find out what's going on and change beliefs. So doing affirmations during this, with those theta waves going, that's changing the belief system at the state that we were in when we were children. It's been proven scientifically that to almost the age of 8, children live in what's known as the theta wave state, and they're just absorbing everything in order to be able to form their beliefs, their personality, and their individuation. They come in as clean slates for the most part, and then they just absorb and absorb and absorb and absorb and absorb like a sponge. Most of our personality is set by the time we're 5 or 6. Isn't that crazy? So we can also put these affirmations on Post-it notes. I used to take 3x5 cards and use push pins, and I'd put them on all 4 walls. When I learned that my subconscious sees everything when I walk into a room, whether I consciously look at that picture or not, I started putting I love myself on every wall. I am happy on every wall. I am grateful on every wall. And my mind, when I walked into that room, no matter which direction I looked, all 4 walls had I love myself. I am grateful. I am happy. And I'm grateful, happy, joyful, and thankful. And I love myself. I am enough. I am free. Now, at one point, Right over my sleeping area, I must have had over 150 3x5 cards where I would write down positive statements and put them up. I am enough was on every single wall. I've sat and meditated for an hour just repeating I am enough as a mantra. Anytime you get triggered, no matter how it is, I am enough. You get triggered in driving traffic because that guy cuts you off, I am enough. That lady flipped you the bird and started cussing at you because you didn't realize you cut her off, I am enough. You drop something and you have to clean up the mess, I am enough. Instead of beating yourself up, prove to yourself consistently and constantly how enough you are that you can handle the situation. I am enough, I love myself, I am free. I'm not going to ever stop pushing that exercise. I am enough, I love myself, I am free. Love yourself so that you can love others as if they're a part of you. All the great teachers teach this. All the great gurus, the great enlightened masters, they all teach it. Meditation is not necessarily about making your mind go blank. Instead of understanding something, oversit it. Let it rise up to you and deal with it as it comes up. You can use my abuse recovery method here on YouTube. That will help you find specific wounds and let go of the emotional energy attached to them. Free your nervous system from it. Also, the mirror work. Hawk, I'm proud of you for doing these lives every Saturday. And 7 other things, and always use your name. Hawk, I forgive you for not doing these lives sooner. And 7 more things, and always use your name. Hawk, I commit to you that we're going to keep soaring Saturdays. Or Saturday soar sessions. I haven't figured out the name yet. Hawk, I commit to you that I love you. And use 7 things. I learned this from Lisa Nichols. It's an incredible practice. I am enough. I love myself. I am free. Hawk, I'm proud of you for, and look yourself in the eye in the mirror when you say that. Hawk, I forgive you for, and look yourself in the eyes in the mirror when you say that. Hawk, I commit to you that, and look yourself in the eyes in the mirror when you say that. And express and push as much love as you can. It's called eye energy transfer. Press that love out and have it reflected back to you like a laser. Love yourself. You are worth it. Fill yourself with love so that you can give it to others freely. If you don't fill your own cup, how are you supposed to ever give somebody else a drink? If this wasn't full, I couldn't even have a drink for myself, much less somebody else. It's not as difficult as we want to make it. It's simple, but it isn't easy. And the reason it isn't easy is because this wants to make it complicated. This simplifies things. This simplifies things a lot. Very simple. It's either love or it's not love. This wants to make it very complicated. Oh, it can't be that easy. It can't be that simple. I want to complicate it. Where's all the little details? Sometimes you need to get the big root out so that you can find the little hair roots and pull them out. But if you love yourself and use these different methods I've described, that moistens the soil and allows those roots to come out. Love yourself. You are enough. Be free. Free yourself today. Use my abuse recovery method. All you have to do is plug it in and lay back, and it'll help you start releasing those things that haunt you in the night or even during the day. So remember this always. I am enough. I love myself. I am free. You are enough. Love yourself. You are free. I love you. Have a blessed and wonderful week, and see you here next Saturday, where we will soar again, free.